So it's about 2 p.m. I just woke up. Last night I was looking through a few ideas that sort of interest me that I kind of want to explore today and show you guys how I sort of go about deciding whether or not it's worth pursuing something. One of those ideas is taking technology that's something we didn't have, 3, 4 years ago readily available, and applying it to the idea of smart cities and specifically smart parking. So the idea is basically 3G enabled sensors with an array of proximity sensors that can tell you in given areas if parking spaces are available in real time or not. So as a consumer, you'd be able to just look on an app, not waste time looking for parking and just be able to find a spot. The other one is one I've been sort of dabbling with for maybe a couple days. I'll probably look into it a little bit more and explain my thought process behind it. And that's the idea of taking the same concept of bird scooters or Lime scooters, but having a subsidized ownership model. So where you provide the fleets, we provide the fleets as a company, but they're private owners and private operators, and that will give us the ability, if it worked, to mitigate risk and cost liability and scale quicker to many cities. There's a few challenges with it, and I'm going to look into a few other sort of lingering ideas I have. I'll go through them all today, and we'll see what happens.
So I have a few constraints when I'm looking for something sort of to work on. One of the first is these are basically from my notes, so I'm just going to read them off. Addressable market size, current immediate demand in that market, whatever it may be, and is there any competition already addressing whatever the problem is that's causing that demand, and has that competition solved that problem in a way that you wouldn't be able to provide a 10x solution, or that you wouldn't be able to um, provide a solution at all. The other one is growth trajectory of the solution in the market. So you can find a lot of different play or spaces that have problems, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that the trajectory of growth as soon as you start to release something is going to immediately fit the demand or an unknown demand for a problem that people might not even realize they have. So that's another thing to look at. It depends on, are you looking to start something quickly and quickly grow it, which is very rare. Usually startups are very slow, oftentimes either a J curve or just a linear, eventually exponential curve. The other one is, how does a solution for a market with a problem that I'm interested in fit my own technical experience and my own background, as well as my own personal interests? And is it actually, is this problem in this market or this space that I'm looking at something that I personally would use, even if I didn't build it? So it's really easy to fall into a place of like, I come up with a solution for a given problem in a given market, but I come to find that I get so hyped on building something that if I take a step back and I look at it from the perspective of like, okay, if someone totally outside of myself built it, I didn't have the same hype behind it because it's the fact that I'm biased for simply building it, would I still use it? And oftentimes, this is a really good point that Paul Graham made in one of his old, I think it's from like 2012 blog posts on startup ideas, is oftentimes when you ask that question to founders, it'll be no. And it's like, there's another saying where um, as a startup, you have to eat your own dog food, right? So like whatever you're making, it should be something that's immediately addressable to you and solves an obvious problem that is applicable to you. Um, the other thing I like to look at is, okay, for these ideas, how long would it take to build an MVP? What would a minimal viable product in MVP look like? And how long would it take to test the real demand and not just base, demand assumption on things that you read online or personal bias? That's another thing. For this project specifically, one that I care about a lot is quantifiable impact. So how do you measure the potential impact of idea? It's not something very easy, and it's not something that I would say I even have a formula for, but it's difficult at this point in my life to want to work on things that I feel really don't provide value outside of, maybe making people money or solving problems that really, maybe are like a 2x or 3x solution over something that exists. It doesn't necessarily make people's lives incredibly different or incredibly better, but, make them a little easier. And that's fine in a lot of cases. And a lot of startups do start up that way. Um, but I'd like to take the approach this time of using my past experiences and all of the knowledge I've sort of accrued over the years to sink my teeth into something that I feel does have a quantifiable impact.
I like to take a break partway through the day and either go do something that's physical exercise or something that just takes my mind off of working. It's hard to work 24/7 during a day, as most of you know, but sometimes startups require it. But it's also important to sort of step back and then come back to what you were working on. Because oftentimes, at least for me, you'll find you'll get some insight or something that just sort of clicks in your head while you step away from something. So I'm going to take the time to go to a store right now and go ahead and pick up some food and then go to a rock climbing gym I usually go to, and I'll take you guys along with me. When you go out and you start looking at things with eyes that aren't just sort of like acceptance of the status quo, and you try and think of why are things certain ways, oftentimes you will find things that can be improved upon or certain pieces that are problems that people don't really realize they have. And taking that approach for finding ideas, it's very likely that you'll find something that way. It's hard to come across an idea usually when you're just sitting alone in a room and trying to think. Most ideas and their inspirations come from, in my experience, sort of an external stimulus, sort of a secondhand sort of experience that will make something click in your head, and you'll connect the dots and you'll be like, oh hey, maybe there'd be a better way to do this, or there's something here I think that might be worth exploring. So something to think about. Just got to the climbing gym. I had a few interesting ideas while I was driving, and it comes back to looking at things with fresh eyes. One of them was I drove by a library, and I was curious. It might already exist, but I haven't seen it. Why we don't have a Spotify-esque service for books? Why do we still go to libraries to use books when everything's digitized? The other thing was I've done a lot of intermittent fasting in the past, and I've seen a lot of health benefits from it, but I don't think anyone's sort of broken it down into a sort of a system with tech built on top of it. So an application or maybe a web service that really teaches you step by step the benefits of what actually it does to your body and how to do it. There's a lot of scientific studies around it, like reversing diabetes, mitigating heart disease risk, and a lot of other things. Maybe something worth looking into, but it's another example I think of taking two different sort of interests that otherwise aren't even close to the same category and crossing them, and you get something unique from it. So software and fasting, maybe it's an idea.